Afghanistan is a land forged in fire, a place where war has never truly left, not for a single moment. Empires have risen and fallen here, their legacies buried beneath centuries of sand and stone. But beyond the raids and the bloodshed, beyond the reports typed up in military outposts, there are stories that were never written down, stories no one dares to tell, but no one can forget. Formless shadows drifting across midnight watchposts, laughter echoing beside ancient graves, a towering creature with 6 fingers and burning red eyes. These are not tales from fiction. They were whispered by the very soldiers who once walked these blood-stained hills. Are they hallucinations from minds pushed to the edge, or fragments of a truth we were never meant to uncover? In today's video, we'll take you deep into that darkness, into a realm where war might not be the most terrifying thing of all. But first, legend says you'll get incredibly lucky if you like and subscribe before this video ends. When a soldier steps onto the battlefield, they carry with them a specific definition of what an enemy looks like: bullets, ambushes, the sharp crack of an explosion tearing through the night. Danger is something they expect, something calculated, something faced head-on. But Afghanistan holds threats that no training manual has ever prepared them for. After 9/11, thousands of US troops were deployed across this unforgiving terrain, sent to hunt down terrorists and secure remote regions. They built outposts in places no map detailed, patrolled narrow roads carved into mountains, and camped hundreds of miles from the nearest sign of civilization. But as the missions progressed, something else emerged, something that no official war log ever recorded. Some soldiers began reporting strange lights, not flashlights, not flares, but cold blue glows, drifting across the dark like eyes that didn't blink. Electronic equipment would malfunction for no reason. Radios went silent, fully charged batteries died in seconds, rifles jammed during critical moments, even after being cleaned and checked. At first, these were written off as technical glitches, but when it kept happening, always at night, always in the same locations, it became something else. Then came the figures. Towering silhouettes, still and silent, standing just beyond the patrol line. Men raised their night vision scopes only to see nothing, but when the goggles were lowered, the figure had moved closer. Some soldiers said they were knocked to the ground by an unseen force, and when they returned to base, they weren't just shaken, they were terrified. No one mocked them, because others had seen it too, and that was only the beginning. Modern warfare, with all its technology, training, and chain of command, is designed to reduce unpredictability, but sometimes it shatters that illusion. In 2004, at a U.S. military base known as Outpost Diamondback near Mosul, Iraq, 3 soldiers were assigned to a routine Humvee patrol along the base perimeter. The heat was oppressive. Red dust clung to every surface. It was, by all accounts, just another tense but ordinary day in a hostile zone. Then they saw movement. Near the fence line, shadows shifted. Their first thought was simple: insurgents. Without hesitation, they jumped from the vehicle, took position, and opened fire. One target went down. The rest fled into the desert haze, leaving behind a single, unmoving body. Still, nothing seemed out of the ordinary until it began. A thin line of black smoke started rising from the mouth of the fallen figure. At first, the soldiers thought it was heat vapor or gunpowder residue, but this smoke didn't disperse. It twisted upward, curling unnaturally in the still air like something alive, and then it began to take form. Standing nearly 2 meters tall, the smoke coalesced into a translucent figure, vaguely human, but incomplete, like a half-formed memory. Its eyes glowed a deep, burning red, and its mouth stretched open impossibly wide, but no sound came out. Not a scream, not a whisper, just silence. And then it vanished. No explosion, no trace, no explanation, just gone. All 3 soldiers saw it. All 3 described it the same way. And one of them, Jerry Aberdine, would go on to recount the event publicly more than 10 times. But it wasn't just his words that left people uneasy. It was the look in his eyes, the unmistakable gaze of a man who had seen something no one was meant to see. And who wasn't lying? In the jagged central mountains of Afghanistan, where sheer cliffs split the sky and icy winds scream through stone corridors, an 8-man special operations unit was assigned a high-stakes mission. Infiltrate, observe, identify the target, and extract safely. These were seasoned soldiers, men trained to move in silence, think under fire, and survive anything the night might throw at them. But what they encountered during this mission was not something from any combat manual. For 2 days, they camped on a high ridge, watching the village below. Everything went according to plan until the second night. It began with a sound faint at first, a low, insect-like buzzing in their radios and earpieces, barely noticeable. But within minutes, it escalated. The buzz grew into a violent frequency, drilling into their skulls, triggering nausea, dizziness, and sudden mental collapse. The toughest man on the team vomited. The lead scout fell to his knees, clutching his head, and all anyone could do was press themselves into the dirt, clutching their weapons and bracing for an ambush. But no bullets came. Instead, one of the sentries, still holding his rifle, saw something approaching, a figure in white, moving toward them, not walking, not running, but gliding. They flipped down their night vision goggles. What they saw broke the rules of physics. There was no heat signature. The figure wore a long, flowing robe that seemed untouched by gravity. It drifted silently just above the ground, as if the earth itself refused to acknowledge its weight. Its eyes glowed deep red, steady, unblinking, locked directly onto the soldiers. And then one of its arms detached. It fell to the ground without a sound, but instead of landing like flesh, it curled like smoke, shimmered, and reattached itself as if nothing had happened. Every man's instinct screamed to open fire, but none did, because something ancient inside them whispered the truth. This was not something to provoke. Then chaos. Torches suddenly lit up in the village below. Voices, footsteps. A rushing storm of human motion. Taliban forces, no doubt reacting to the same phenomenon. The white figure turned slowly and vanished just like that. When a follow-up unit arrived 2 days later, they expected resistance. But what they found was something far worse. The village was silent, no gunfire, no shell damage, just bodies torn apart, dismembered and scattered, weapons untouched, blood dried into the dust. And still, no sign of a battle ever taking place. Among all the tales whispered through the ranks of deployed soldiers, there is one that continues to send chills down spines, even years later. A story so outlandish, it should be impossible, but too many witnesses say it's true. In 2002, a U.S. military patrol disappeared during a routine operation near the rugged mountains south of Kandahar. They never returned. No radio contact, no distress signal. Gone. A special operations team was sent in to investigate. Veterans, highly trained, fully armed. They followed the last known GPS trail into a narrow gorge, flanked by cliffs like jagged teeth. Then signs, scattered equipment. Shredded gear, torn backpacks, bloodstains, but no bodies until they found the cave. At its mouth, human bones, military insignias still clinging to torn uniforms, dog tags embedded in the dust. And then it struck. Without warning, a massive spear, crude, primitive, but razor-sharp, flew from the darkness, impaling the point man. It punched straight through his body armor, pinning him to the ground like a rag doll. What followed was a roar. Not human, not animal, something else. From the shadows emerged a giant, over 13 feet tall, its skin like weathered stone, covered in matted red hair and tangled beard. Its muscles rippled with inhuman strength. It wore skins of beasts, stitched crudely. In one hand, a club made of sharpened bone. In the other, a weapon that looked more ancient than man itself. But the most horrifying detail, 6 fingers on each massive hand, and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, like knives forged for tearing flesh. The soldiers opened fire, full auto, M4 carbines, sidearms, even grenades. Round after round tore into the creature. Only when the dust cleared and the thing collapsed did they dare breathe. The corpse, if you could call it that, weighed over 1,100 pounds. Its stench was unbearable. The helicopter crew, assigned to extract it, had to wear gas masks. Only a portion of the body could be loaded onto a C-130 cargo plane. But what happened next was even stranger. Even in cold storage, the body decayed at an unnatural rate. Flesh deteriorated within hours. Bone structure began to collapse. The entire incident classified. The mission log sealed. Personnel reassigned. But some details slipped through, enough to raise a terrifying question. Was this creature one of the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in the book of Genesis, offspring of fallen angels and human women, cast down for their violence and corruption? If so, the ancient texts weren't just metaphor, they were warning signs, and we ignored them. There are certain posts no soldier ever wants to be assigned to, not because of ambush risk, not because of poor visibility or exposure, but because of the stories. Stories passed quietly between rotations, never officially recorded, but never forgotten. At Outpost Hassanabad, deep in Afghanistan's infamous Helmand province, there was such a place. The soldiers called it simply the Rock. On the surface, it was nothing, a guard post perched atop the crumbling remains of an ancient mud fortress. Elevated roughly 20 feet above the desert floor, it offered a perfect vantage point over the southern perimeter. Tactically, it was ideal. Spiritually, it was cursed. From the very first days of occupation, strange things began to happen. New batteries fully charged would drain in seconds. Radios would go dead the moment soldiers stepped onto the platform. Flashlights failed, rifles jammed, and only at that location. Moved 10 feet away. Everything worked perfectly again, but it wasn't just the gear. Soon, soldiers started hearing footsteps, heavy, slow, and deliberate, pacing in the gravel behind them. When they turned, nothing. Others heard groaning, wheezing, or worse, a voice, barely audible, whispering in Russian, inches from their ear. One corporal, a soldier named Oleg, only lasted a single night. He returned to the barracks pale and shaking, refusing to go back. He claimed something stood behind him, breathed on his neck, and then spoke. A single sentence, in a low, rasping voice, words he never repeated aloud. He was reassigned the next day. Soon, it wasn't just one man. More and more soldiers began requesting transfers. Some stayed awake the entire shift, refusing to turn their backs to the desert. Others brought charms, rosaries, even handwritten verses tucked into their armor. Then came the breaking point. A young sentry spotted a figure, unmoving, standing in the distance. He raised his night vision scope. Nothing. But when he lowered it, the figure had moved, closer, close enough that he could hear it breathing. From that moment on, the Rock became legend. No formal report was ever filed. But no one stood night watch up there again without some form of protection, physical or spiritual, because deep down, every soldier knew something else was watching back. Sometimes the most terrifying sound isn't a scream. It's a laugh, soft, distant, playful, a sound that should mean job, but instead, in the stillness of a battlefield night, it becomes unbearable. At Fob Salerno in the southeastern province of Khost, soldiers from the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment were stationed at a watch post built on what locals called the Old Graveyard. 2 crumbling stone towers marked the boundary of the forgotten burial site. From the first week, something felt wrong. It began with the usual signs: a sudden chill, wind where there should be none, shadows that didn't move with the light. But then came the laugh, high-pitched, crystal clear, the laugh of a child right beside the ear, not over the radio, not echoing from far away, close, intimate, mocking. The first soldier to report it activated both his night vision and thermal scope, scanning wildly for movement. Nothing, some tried to dismiss it as fatigue, sleep deprivation, hallucination, until it happened again and again. One night, a young sentry turned instinctively, sensing someone standing behind him, and he saw her. A small, pale figure, childlike in size, skin white as ash, eyes wide and unblinking, staring directly into his. He didn't scream, he didn't speak. In fact, for 3 days, he didn't say a single word. Not because he was ordered to remain silent, but because something inside him had gone quiet. At first, his superiors labeled it combat stress, classic PTSD, but then a second soldier went silent, then a third. Psychological explanations began to fray. Some whispered that the post was haunted by the spirit of a little girl killed in a long-forgotten battle, trapped between worlds. Others feared something far worse, a mimic, a shapeless entity wearing the illusion of a child, not to comfort, but to deceive, to unravel the human mind from within. But perhaps the most chilling part, not a single recording device ever captured the sound of the laugh, not one. Eventually, the post earned a new reputation, one no one dared say aloud. Young soldiers began volunteering for desert patrols, fully aware of the dangers outside the wire. Because for some, facing enemy fire was less terrifying than hearing a child's laugh echo in the darkness and knowing they were completely alone. When a soldier says they saw a 13-foot-tall creature with 6 fingers and razor-sharp teeth, it's easy to blame trauma. When a patrol reports a white-robed figure gliding silently across the ground, leaving no heat signature and vanishing into thin air, we might chalk it up to exhaustion, stress, or heat stroke. But when dozens of units in different regions over the span of years describe eerily similar encounters, we're left with a far more disturbing question. What exactly are we dealing with? These aren't ghost stories whispered around a fire. They're not isolated hallucinations. They're consistent, detailed, and terrifying. Many have tried to explain these phenomena through ancient texts. Take the Nephilim, beings mentioned in the book of Genesis. The offspring of fallen angels and human women, giants of immense strength, punished by God and buried beneath the earth to protect mankind. The giant of Kandahar fits that description a little too well, and the others. The shadowy figures near outposts like Diamondback. The invisible presence on the rock. The childlike mimic that unraveled the minds of trained soldiers. They echo another entity from ancient lore. The jinn. In Islamic and Middle Eastern tradition, jinn are beings made of smokeless fire, invisible, intelligent, capable of shape-shifting and influencing human behavior. They're said to dwell in graveyards, ruins, caves, deserts. Precisely the places where modern outposts were built. If that holds true, then maybe, just maybe, these soldiers weren't hallucinating. They were trespassers, occupiers not of territory, but of sacred, ancient ground, and what they encountered wasn't bound by our realities. Maybe war doesn't just bring death, maybe it wakes things up. Things that were meant to remain buried. Afghanistan has long been called the graveyard of empires, but what if, on a deeper level, it's also the graveyard of forgotten truths? Truths that predate human memory, truths that we covered with maps and missions and flags, but never really understood. You don't have to believe every story you've heard tonight. Skepticism is natural. But if something stirred inside you, if a detail refused to let go, then ask yourself this: what if they weren't myths? What if they were warnings?